So welcome everyone to the final session, to the closing session today. Thank you to all of you who came today and didn't leave early. I know a lot of people needed to leave early today, so I really appreciate you being here for this final session. We'll be introducing the conference venue for next year as an opening part of this closing session. Then we will have a keynote, followed by reflections from the Eden Council of Fellows. And then, yeah, so thank you for coming this morning. I wanted to take a moment. Who was at the awards dinner last night? Wonderful. Okay. Thank you for coming despite having been up so late last night. I just wanted to announce the winner from last night's Best Research Paper Award. Are you here today, Tarindu? Okay, she probably was out celebrating last night. No? No? Okay, please stand up. Please stand up. Tarindu, oh, I'm going to really destroy your last name. Liana Gunavadina from the University College of Estate Management in the United Kingdom. Her paper was called Automatic Transcription Software, Good Enough for Accessibility, a case study from built environment education. So one more round of applause for Tarindu. Okay, now I would like to invite Rebecca Galley and Gerald Evans to the podium to introduce next year's venue for the Eden Conference.
Okay, thank you, Lisa Marie, for your warm welcome. So my name is Gerald Evans. I'm head of learning design at the Open University, and I'm with Rebecca Galley, who is director for learning experience and technology. I'd like to say a couple of thank yous, first of all. Firstly, to Vives for their hosting of this year's conference. It's been a fantastic conference. They've been very generous in sharing some of their experiences about hosting with us. And it's also been very clear from the talks and demos from Vives members here this year that you're a very innovative and forward-looking institution. So thank you for that. You'll be a hard act to follow. We'd also like to say thank you to the Eden Executive Committee for approving our application and giving us the chance to host next year's conference. For us at the Open University UK, we're excited to host such an important time in the university's history as we turn 50 this year. And the opportunities it offers us to work in collaboration with our faculties and scholarship centres across the university. So we have scholarship centres in each of our 4 faculties, which are Wellbeing, Education and Languages, Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths, the Faculty of Business and Law, and the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. We'll also be working closely with our OpenTel Research Hub, led by Eileen Scanlon from the Institute of Educational Technology. A bit about the campus. So as you can see from the slide, we are located at the Walton Hall campus in Milton Keynes, which is about 80 kilometres north of London and halfway between Oxford and Cambridge. We've got great connections to the rest of the UK via rail and motorway, and plenty of hotels within walking distance. The campus itself is a large campus. There's about 3,000 full-time members of staff on site, including about 1,200 full-time academics and about 250 of our research students. And the campus itself is in a beautiful riverside setting with lots of fine walks to enjoy. And with any luck, we'll have some good weather next year for you to enjoy the grounds. We also hope next year to offer delegates a tour of the award-winning Open STEM labs, This is a facility that offers access to research-grade scientific equipment and experiments for students to explore and participate in from their desktops. We're also a short trip away from Bletchley Park, as you may know, which was home to the World War II code breakers, and is now a heritage attraction. You will be aware that Eden and the Open University UK share a very close history, and Andres and others have spoken at the conference about how the university is seen as the birthplace for Eden. We continue to share a powerful mission in terms of opening up education to the world, and Rebecca will now speak a little about that mission.
Steve Wheeler noted in his keynote right at the very start of the conference that the OU is celebrating its 50th year this year, and what an exciting year it's been. The Open University flew in the face of established higher education when it was founded in 1969. The bold vision of Prime Minister Harold Wilson created a new university which was founded on the principle of being open to all and branded the University of the Air. With challenges ahead, such as Brexit and Industry 4.0, and the urgent challenge of the current global skills gap, the OU has become more important than its founders could ever have imagined. 50 years ago, no one knew whether this University of the Air would take off or spectacularly self-destruct. In fact, the original University Wilson building was designed in the shape of an H, so that it could be easily repurposed into a hospital should the experiment not work. Because how could a university with no entry requirements, no student campus, guide the educationally disenfranchised through the demands of a degree? It was a huge gamble, and not only politically, but for those early academics who were risking their careers to join this bold experiment. From 24,000 students in our first intake in 1971, we now have over 174,000 people studying higher education courses with us. If you could move the slide forward, thank you. Making us one of the largest higher education providers in Europe. Now 50 years on, students can see 40,000-year-old signals coming from space, experience a Mars landscape, see through a slice of rock and look a fruit fly in the eye, all without moving from their workspace, using the capabilities of the Open STEM Lab that Gerald mentioned earlier. Today's learners can go on a virtual field trip exploring the geology of the Peak District or immerse themselves in augmented reality to see a beating heart in great detail. And the OU Law School is one of the first in the UK to enable law students to give real-life legal advice under the scrutiny of solicitors in our free online pro bono legal clinic. Alongside our degree programmes, we offer a wealth of free learning materials via OpenLearn, which has just celebrated 60 million visitors to its site, and the OU also pioneered FutureLearn, now established as the leading social learning MOOC platform with over 173 partners, including specialist education providers and leaders in industry across a variety of sectors. Internationally, projects to develop the skills of teachers in remote corners of Africa and India have made a huge impact to the education of children in those regions. As part of our 50th celebration, we've created a short film that I wanted to share with you, not only because it celebrates the OU mission, but it's the mission that we all share as members of Eden. I won't apologise to those of you that may have already seen it, because I've seen it many times, and it moves me every single time. And it reconnects me to my purpose as an open and distance educator, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
And relevant also to these problems are our plans for a University of the Air. It's designed to provide an opportunity for those who, for one reason or another, have not been able to take advantages of higher education.
Let's say you're one of those people. One of those who think where you start in life shouldn't limit where you go. One of those who think a university shouldn't just be, well, a university. Let's say you're one of us, and together we are the Open University. Open to all of us, all of the time. Not some of us, some of the time. We are a movement of millions, a mission of one. We are disruptors, occasional troublemakers, game changers. We are the fuel for imagination, chasing comets, making the impossible possible. We are restless in our drive to see progress that touches us all, inspiring students to become ministers and midwives, barristers and teachers, tech entrepreneurs, business gurus, and more. Our cause goes beyond being an innovative way of learning, and our future lies in continuing to build that cause. We are the people who open up the future of learning. This is how we shape the future. Let's say you are one of those people who believe what we believe, one of those excited by possibility. Let's say you are one of us. We can't wait to open up millions of futures. And with your help, we can.
Yeah, wonderful, huh? And we really, really look forward to welcoming you to the Open University UK next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Gerald, and I'm very much looking forward to next year and visiting your university. Our next keynote speaker this morning is Ilkka Tuomi, founder and chief scientist at Meaning Processing in Finland, and he will be talking to us today about artificial intelligence in education, the state of the practice, and the paths toward the future.
Okay, this should be on, and it is on. So, good morning. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence, but I really struggled during the last 3 days that what new can I say that you already don't know? Because artificial intelligence currently is like a Cambrian explosion. You have all these exciting things coming up, and you can read from the newspaper almost daily how there is something new, interesting happening. And as you saw in a keynote earlier, you have all interesting and magical things happening. You have horses transformed to zebras, you have talking Mona Lisas, you have people switching their heads, and you have all these exciting things. So it looks like there is something really new happening and some interesting new things going on. On the other hand, I struggle because if I'm looking what is happening in education, at schools with digital technologies, distance learning, it seems that we are still talking about the same things that we have been talking for a very long time. Maybe I can just tell one simple example. In early 1990s, I was sitting next to a computer and with a friend of mine. I used to work at Nokia Research Center at that time. And I was sitting next to a computer and we opened a new application. I was saying, wow, this is going to change the world. This is going to change the society. That it was probably one of the first, I mean, maybe the third or fourth World Wide Web server. And since then, since the early 1990s, I've been talking about the same thing, that how these things are going to change the society, how our systems of production, how our economies, how our social infrastructures and social structures are going to be changing, and how we hit with these technologies the very deepest layers of human knowledge, knowing, learning, and social interaction. So in a way, I kind of uncomfortable because I was obviously thinking, what new I can tell you? And I know in this audience we have kind of people who have been working in this area for decades already, and some of you are more newcomers. But many of the topics that we are talking are still very similar to what we have been talking before. So now we have the situation where AI is suddenly everywhere. And on the other hand, I have this feeling that we are not really still kind of advancing to anything new. Since the early, I mean, in the early 90s, when I saw the World Wide Web, I said, this is going to revolutionize the world. I already had written a book on artificial intelligence. I already had written a master's thesis in theoretical physics on neural networks, and I was working in Nokia Research Center as an expert in artificial intelligence and expert systems. Very early there, I set up a collaboration competence center with the idea that actually machines are not going to solve any of our major problems. Instead, it's going to be collaboration with humans, mediated by technologies. And then I set a knowledge management group in Nokia, which was focusing on innovation and knowledge creation processes within these kinds of global corporations. So in many ways, we have been talking about digital technologies a lot. I've been writing Finnish strategies for information society. I've been doing visions for the European Commission, where this world is going, and so forth. So in that context, now I'm looking at artificial intelligence. I mean, it's an old thing, but something new is happening there. So now what I've tried to do with you is to try to, I think I cannot say very much new things to you, but what I try to do is to kind of crystallize what we have been talking about for a long time. And in a way I'm saying that the devil is in the big picture. So we have to understand this kind of societal economic transformation to be able to understand what AI is doing today and where it's going. And education, learning, knowledge creation, these are the things that are at the core of all social processes, and they will be key to my talk. So I'm going to talk about the big picture, and then I'm going to talk about the detail, the devil in the details. So what artificial intelligence really can do today, why it can do specific types of things, and I try to frame the whole thing in this kind of way. Let's see how it works. And I also hope that we have time to really have some discussion. Many of the things that I'm going to talk about are very big. So I'm opening doors to huge topics that we should be talking about intensively today, tomorrow, and in the years to come. So I hope we have at least very kind of quick entry through those doors. Sorry, I'm skipping here. So, you know, European Commission just last December created an action plan for artificial intelligence. They say that in the next years, Europe should invest 20 billion euros in artificial intelligence. About 7 billion euros per year will be public investment, and European Commission is saying that it will at least in the beginning put 1 billion euros a year to artificial intelligence. So this is big, and you know it. It's on top of all agendas. All the member states in Europe are now writing or have already written their strategies where they say that this is going to be huge. I was just some time ago, a few weeks ago, in a conference where the general director of UNESCO was saying that artificial intelligence is the biggest change in human history since the Paleolithic time. So there's something really big. People at least think that there is something really big and something really new happening. Well, Commission says this is like the steam engine or the electricity, and AI is transforming the world. Here I get this feeling, okay, I was sitting next to this computer and I was saying, this is going to transform the world. Yes, it did, and it is transforming the world. AI is part of that story, so it's not something separate. UNESCO just had a meeting in our conference in Peking with 50 ministers talking about the importance of AI in education. And they say there is no doubt that AI will revolutionize the delivery and management of education and learning. So, big things. So I'm confused in a way. I've seen a lot of this stuff. I've been doing AI since the early 1980s. I'm one of the first persons to be connected to the internet in Finland, even before there was an internet in Finland. I wrote a book on computer hackers and computer networks. Then I wrote a book on artificial intelligence. I have a PhD in adult education. I've been working in knowledge creation, all that stuff, digital, really implementing these things, and I'm still a bit confused. So I hope this confusion can be crystallized. Here, one key point is that I think we have always in education have this kind of it's kind of pendulum swinging between two edges or two boundaries of what we think about what is education. So one role of education, societal role of education, is really the civilization function. So we try to bring young kids to adults who are able to operate in the world where they are. So this is the Paleolithic function of education. This Paleolithic function has been extremely important during the last century. We try to bring people, develop skills so that they can be linked to the machines that are on the factory floor that produce all the stuff that we have. So this kind of intergenerational transfer of knowledge, skill, and membership in these communities that form society and its economic practices has always been very important. The other edge is this developing, the human capability, developing humans. This is the Aristotle, Socrates, since that. We have also thought that the role of education is to bring individuals to their maximum potential and so forth. So the last century and our systems of education are now very heavily on the civilization role. In some countries, like in China, they use extensively AI to actually personalize training so that every individual could be similar. In some other countries, like I'm coming from Finland, the trend is exactly the opposite. So the whole basic education is not to make people similar, but to actually allow them to become what they are. So this is on the developing side. So even today we have different. But if you look policy discussions, they are very much about productive skills, what people need to know in the future labor market. That's very kind of big political agenda, obviously. So I'm saying now that, this is going to be one important part of my story. We are moving from the civilization accommodation, people becoming members of existing social structures. We are moving, because of technical development, very fast to this human development side again. And I'm saying that actually we should think about education in the sense of human agency. What we need to teach and what we need to learn to be able to be competent partners in the world that is going to be there. So, and I'm saying that technology drives quickly us towards that side. So, just to kind of point what I think about capability and agency in this context. You know, competencies normally are understood to be some kind of mixtures of knowledge or skill and attitude. So, on the knowledge side, I'm saying that we have three different types of things that constitute knowledge. We have this kind of descriptive knowledge, this is knowledge about something. Then we have skills, which is more operational, knowing how to do things. And then we have experience, which tells us what is the context, why we do some things, and why, when some knowledge is relevant. So this is something that people could also call metacognition. So what we have not discussed enough is that competence and capability and agency has two very important components. The other one is material resources. So if you take a brain surgeon and basically give only a screwdriver to him or her, there's nothing much that this brain surgeon can do. So we need to have these technologies that allow us to express our capabilities and competencies and agencies. So technology is really core part of what I call capability. It's kind of broader understanding of what is competence. And the other part is social resources. So when I do something, it's not what I know, it's the capability, it's my capability of mobilizing knowledge in the social environment. So if I'm looking what makes me possible to do things, it's very often the social networks. I know people who can help me, I know people who know something. So I also need this social dimension. And this is something that people have realized, I mean, during the last 20 years, certainly, that social dimension is really very important. And that's why we have been talking about 21st century skills and soft skills and so forth. So as if they would be some kind of separate skills. And in my view, part of the problem is that we have understood skill or competence in a very individualistic sense. So it's an attribute of a person. The person either has competence or skill or doesn't. And I'm moving now much more, and many other people do as well, towards the kind of extended model. So it's not my competence, it's not my skill, it's not something that can be tested, for instance, do I have the skill? Without taking into account the technical environment and the physical environment, the space we are, and all the kind of material constructions around us and technologies available us, but also the social resources available. So the talk about 21st century skills, for instance, or soft skills, in a way, to me, it kind of indicates that we are moving towards a system where these distributed capabilities are becoming important. Partly because technology is becoming more flexible, and we cannot say that I'm using one specific tool for one specific purpose or kind of activity, but actually I'm using in much more fluid way the technical environment. And this is the essential character of the social networks, the computing networks that we have today. It allows us to reconfigure technical possibilities in ways that have never been before possible. So in almost real time, we can access resources. This is something we did not have in the industrial age in the last century. This is something where we are now today. So we do very quickly this kind of configuration. And that kind of raises this aspect of social and distributed models of competence. So I'm basically, and this is nothing new, I'm saying human intelligence is socially and materially distributed. So it's not what's in your brain. As James Gibson was saying, ask not what's in your head, ask what's your head inside of. So it's really this kind of extended view. And on the other hand, Boninardi, these are titles from papers. This is from 2000, I think, Boninardi's paper. It's not what you know, it's who you know. This is a paper about work in the information age. And I think it's very kind of nicely put. So technologies are not out there. So artificial intelligence, it's not a thing. All technologies are part of social practices. And innovation does not happen when some engineer gets a great idea that, okay, now we have electricity or steam engine. Innovation happens when we adapt these technical, in a way, latent technical possibilities in our social practices. And this process is a social learning process. So actually the invention of technology happens when we take these technical opportunities and possibilities into real use. So I've been talking about downstream innovation, saying that that's actually where innovation happens. That also means that all innovation is social innovation. There is no technical innovation as such. Technologies do not exist without the social use of those technologies. That makes them meaningful technologies, that makes them real. So in a sense, electricity did not revolutionize the world. It's actually the uses of electricity that made a difference. And we actually used a lot of electricity, coal, steel to make that happen. And steam, obviously. So this is the kind of bigger picture where I'm looking AI. So I wrote last year a report for the European Commission on the impact of artificial intelligence and learning, teaching and education. This was a very quick one. I mean, I spent maybe 2 weeks writing it, but it's kind of a starting point for talking about this impact. So in the executive summary, I'm also saying that this is going to be very rapid change. It's going to create, the key point is it's going to create very high pressure in the current institutions to change. So you will see that in educational institutions, there is going to be in the next couple of years a lot of talk about what are you going to do with AI? How are we going to use all these miracle possibilities of AI in our teaching and so forth? So I will show you later what we try to do in that area, but the point is that there is going to be huge social pressure at schools, universities, to do something about AI. At the same time, we are reading these newspaper headlines saying that it is going to be revolutionary, it's going to be bigger than Paleolithic, inventing the fire. So yes, it is going to be an important thing. And I'm saying that because of this, it is going to be very important to understand artificial intelligence. And that's what I kind of try to do here also. I'm saying it's not about having a technology, taking it to use. I'm saying it's part of this much longer story. Clicking this screen, showing the World Wide Web, thinking, wow, we are hitting the core of societal processes, learning processes. This is going to be a big thing in the future. This AI, that we are now seeing, is one element of a much bigger picture. So very often when we talk about AI in education, people think that, okay, what can I do now with artificial intelligence technologies in my classroom, for instance? So we think that the world would remain as it is, and we add just a piece of technology. Well, the interesting story here is that artificial intelligence is part of a bigger picture that is transforming the industrial systems that we have been living during the last 2 centuries to a new system. And in that system, we want to understand how we would like to use AI. Then we have to ask why we want to have education in that kind of future world where we are heading. Why education and learning and knowledge is relevant in that future. To understand this change, we have to understand where we are today. So that's what I'm saying. People talk about AI is going to destroy jobs and occupations, or it's going to be the biggest impact on economic productivity increase. Unless we do it, we are failed. So it's kind of very important to understand why did we have jobs in the past? Why did we think it's important to learn skills? Why education in the past? So this is a kind of systemic view where AI may make kind of difference. So I'm just saying very quickly, this is my take. This is very kind of unconventional take, very crystallized view. This is obviously a more complex thing. Why did we have jobs in the last century? Why did we have education? Obviously, I'm saying this is simplified, but I try to point one critical aspect of how the future is going to be different from the past. So last century, innovation really focused on areas where the use of energy allowed us to mechanize human work. This is called automation. It shows up in economic theory as productivity, labor productivity improvement. And And the secret is that actually, if you look the big picture of last century, growth is very much grounded on very rapid growth of fossil fuels. So if you ask, how do I know that there has been success in the last century, economic growth, everything fine, the most obvious indicator is that you look the residue. What happens when you keep on growing? Well, the answer is CO2. So if you want to know whether there is growth in the industrial system, you just look how much there is CO2 in the air. That's the kind of simplest way of doing it. Why it is like that? Why we did that last century? It is because fossil fuels happen to be natural resources accumulated over hundreds of millions of years. So there's a lot of work to produce that stuff. It takes hundreds of millions of years, billions and billions of anaerobic bacteria to actually produce oil. And then we go and we pump. This happens basically during the last 70 years or so. We start very heavily pumping this oil out of ground. It costs roughly $1 per barrel to pump oil in Qatar and Saudi Arabia. So basically, it's almost free. So the more you use this almost free energy, the more productive the economy looks like. The more you use it, the more economic growth you get. So if you look the economic incentives, innovation goes into areas where you can use this almost free energy as much as possible and replace human work, biological kind of work and energy using that technology. So that's the kind of very short story of the last century. So, and in economic theory, it shows up as productivity growth and growth because in economic accounting, the value of fossil fuel, for instance, is counted using its market value. So it's, it's how much you pay for it. But the thing is that you don't pay for the work that actually created it. So you don't pay for the bacteria to actually do the stuff. You only pay for the guys who actually pumped it and shipped it to your port. So it's grossly underestimated, the impact of energy. And if you have economists around here, it's interesting that if you do this computation right, there is no effect of innovation in the last century in economic productivities. I mean, this is called Solov's residue, basically. Solov was saying that there's a kind of mysterious extra growth. This is called total productivity growth and residue. Economic grows faster than its inputs. So labor inputs, we have been adding 1 billion persons per every decade now to the global system. And we have been adding material resources. And it seems that economy grows faster than these inputs. So this faster, this mysterious residue is called technology and innovation in economics. If you count energy inputs right, this mysterious, unexplainable growth disappears. So obviously you need something more than machines and oil. You need something to fix that stuff. So you need to put the machine on the factory floor, you need ports, you need streets, you need buildings, you need, airports. So what you need is actually concrete. So this is the concrete base of the industrial system of production. It's concrete. So you take cement, you take water, you take sand, you build all this infrastructure that we have in the industrial system. Without cement, we would not have industrial systems of production. We would not have growth, we would not have jobs. So interesting thing is to look how much energy goes to cement production. So this is roughly, I'm just showing you the picture. We used 4.1 billion tons of cement in 2017, and this is roughly like 2.5 billion barrels of oil every year that we use to make cement. Cement It's roughly 10% of CO2 or energy consumption in the world today. So that is the concrete base, really the material base of our economic growth. This has to do with AI. I don't go there too much, but a very interesting point in AI is its energy consumption. So we talk about digitalization as if it would be some kind of virtual reality. Last year, at the end of last year, it took 60 barrels of oil to produce 1 Bitcoin. Only the Bitcoin mining uses today more electricity than Switzerland, almost like Austria. That's the Bitcoin. And there is a technical reason, I come back to that in a minute, because it's really core also to AI and its future. Anyway, so I mean, this is a kind of question that I have in my own mind. Why we have the systems as they are? And now obviously the point is that, okay, if we have these high-level policy declarations that the biggest problem in the current system is global warming, and then the same guys say that the biggest opportunity is artificial intelligence, it's going to revolutionize the world and we are supposed to use it everywhere. We have to kind of look that, okay, whether this AI, for instance, addresses this problem or not. I've been saying that if you want to have a machine learning system, really, it's a good thing to have a nuclear power station in your backyard, because these are several orders of magnitude more energy consuming technologies than we have had before. So we tend to look one thing, like AI or something, and project those specific isolated technical ideas or our images of them to a world and keep the rest as it is. So this is from 1950s, a picture. Miracles you see in the next 50 years. They had a special issue, how the world is going to look like in the year 2000. And this is just one of the pictures. I mean, plastics were a big thing in 1950s because everything in her home is waterproof. The housewife of 2000 can do her daily cleaning with a hose. Everything else remains the same. No one in 1950s in the US asked whether the housewives exist in 2000, whether they do their daily cleaning, and whether they still have the ashtray on the table and so forth. So I mean, we have very great difficulties in understanding systemic change, and we think that these technologies are kind of isolated elements. And this is also the story if you are looking like the current estimates of the future of jobs and skill demands. They use models where they think that everything remains the same except something. And then they do computations and come up with numbers. And it looks science because it has a number. So this is a kind of fundamental problem in our way of also predicting and anticipating future developments. So I did the same thing. In the report I wrote for the Commission, I did exactly the same thing. I took the best existing econometric models, the methodology from there, and tried to see what happens to teachers. And this is in the report. I was looking middle school teachers. So in the there's an American database, ONET, that actually catalogs all different occupations and all the different skills that are needed in these different occupations. And then for each skill or each occupation also tasks, what these people do. So this is an example of middle school teacher tasks. What they do in a priority order. This is intended for students, if they want to know whether I would like to be a middle school teacher, they can go to this database and see what kinds of competencies and skills would I need to be a teacher. And they get an idea what stuff they need to do there. So this is the list. I don't go to the list, but I'm just saying that, okay, this is an example of other things being equal. And this is economics basically is a science of ceteris paribus, so it's kind of other things being equal. So you keep everything as it is, and then you add something. So it's like the industrial system added with artificial intelligence and specific functions. And then you come up with predictions that what's going to happen in the future. Okay, it's not a good idea, but then it's a good idea to try to understand what is artificial intelligence really able to do and why. So I quickly just point a couple of things. First, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we often think that it's a thing. Artificial intelligence is not a thing. It's not there for these two important reasons. First, technologies become real only when they are integrated in social practices. So the same kind of technical functionality can play very many different roles if it's used in many different purposes. I mean, think about mobile phone. It's one piece of technology. It plays very many different social roles in different settings. Some of those grow, some die, some become popular, some not. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that it's actually artificial intelligence is a very broad area of research that has many very different approaches. So when we talk about AI, we often think about Hollywood movies or something where there is the AI. There is no such a thing. This is what Whitehead was saying. This is the error of misplaced concreteness. So we have a word for something and we think that there is a thing because there is a word. There is no such a thing. But there are three different lines of research in artificial intelligence. The first is so-called logic-based, where this is the Turing that was mentioned already before, and other guys in the early 1950s, thinking that because you can model human networks as logical networks, computers can do the same stuff that human brain can do. So this is the kind of Turing approach originally. It did not succeed very well. It was tried. This is where the term artificial intelligence comes from the DARPA 1958 conference. So Herbert Simon and others were doing this. Then became knowledge-based approaches, which are more familiar. People have been doing knowledge-based AI for schools and teaching since at least since the early 1980s. So the idea that you represent knowledge, kind of structures of knowledge, and you represent structures of the student's mind, and you find kind of areas where there are gaps, and you kind of use technology to actually teach the person. So these are the kind of representational models, expert systems and those kinds of systems. They are now widely used, but so common that people don't talk about AI very much there. But much of AI in education work is in this area. So there's a long tradition. This week there is a conference in Chicago on artificial intelligence in education, organized by the International Artificial Intelligence in Education Society. It's 25th year, if I remember right, already now. So there's a lot of work in there. But what is the hype today? What you see on the newspaper is data-driven AI. So this is machine learning. This is something that you use massive amounts of data, and that's what we do today. It also has long history. Many AI people don't know, but it's already 1930s, the first models, neural networks models, that were developed. So what we are seeing is a new paradigm for computer programming. That's new. We take a lot of data and we have adaptive systems that actually adapt themselves to the data. So this is not algorithmic processing where you tell the computer what to do, but as we heard, it's kind of goal-oriented approach. You tell what would be the right type of answer, and then you keep on computing until you start to get the right type of an answer. The very, very important point here is that this requires huge amounts of data, and in almost all cases, this data is human labeled. So the radical kind of breakthroughs in this area came in video image processing because there was very good databases with millions of pictures where humans had labeled whether in this picture you have a cat or a dog. And using these databases, you could use this machine learning approach, and the machines learn to know there's a cat, there's a dog. It was almost 50,000 people labeling this data to make this possible. So it is not computers as such, it's very much human-oriented stuff as well. The reason last year Google released a model called BERT, which is a kind of generic language, natural language model. I'm just giving you a couple of numbers. It trained 340 million parameters in this network, and it used, to train the model, it actually used something like 2 to 21 computations. So think about the old computing, where you have a program that says first do that, if not, do something, do something. You have typically something like maybe 1,000 computing operations. Sometimes you have more. But it's on order of, let's say, hundreds and thousands and maybe 10,000 computations. Here we talk about 10 to 21 computations to train this model. Now, if you think what it is, if you think every person on Earth, child to an old person, and every person would compute one multiplication every second for a year, you would need 12,000 planet Earths to do the same amount of computation. So this is a different paradigm, and it has also consequences. So, in a way, this is a new paradigm. On the other hand, it's an old one. So this is the basic model, Rosenblatt's Perceptron. It's based on Hebbian associative learning, where when one action fires in a neural network and another action fires, if they fire simultaneously, they amplify each other. So they kind of lower the threshold, so it's easier that they are kind of synchronized. So this is the Hebbian neuron. And Rosenblatt implemented that in 1950s in neural network models. And current models are basically similar. So this is Google's image recognition algorithm network, GoogleNet, which is basically the same thing. But as you see, we went from tens to billions, 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 and billions. So we are talking about petaflops, 10 to 15 now in these computing systems. So what you get when you go to there? This is state-of-the-art natural language general model by OpenAI, released partly this year. It used 8 million web pages, and it trained 1.5 billion parameters in this network. So this is what you get. So this is a system where you can type in, human can type in some text. And the system keeps on predicting what could be the next word, given all the previous words in this text. So in this case, the human happened to type in, for today's homework assignment, please describe the reasons for the US Civil War. And the system keeps on predicting what could be the most probable next word. Well, okay, it comes up, it could be by, then followed by first name. If it's followed by first name, the next most probable is a second name, and it keeps on inventing these things. So it keeps on writing the story, and it goes on and says, I mean, it is easy to identify why the Civil War happened and so forth. In 1791, Thomas Jefferson said, and then there's a quote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." This is not a quote from Thomas Jefferson. These are predictions, what would be the most probable words if all this previous text would be there. Now, OpenAI did not release, this is a special case because until this application, all these trained models have been published openly on the net. So you can go to the net and download all these models that have been trained with billions and billions of computations, and you can easily kind of modify them and use for own purposes. That's why we are seeing this Cambrian explosion. So all these animals, all these talking Mona Lisas and so forth are examples of these models being used for slightly different purposes. They did not publish this because they thought that there are so big ethical problems. You can automatically generate hate speech. You can automatically generate political opinions that have impact in European kind of elections or American presidential elections. So they say that, okay, we don't release the full model. They released the scientific basis, and the partly trained models. And now they have released the second bigger model, and they say that because everyone is able to copy this within the next 6 months or so, eventually we will give you the whole stuff. But we have a moratorium for about a year before we release the whole model, so that people can think, what are the social and ethical and legal and other implications of these technologies? So this is the first case where the developers actually say that we don't give it openly immediately. So algorithmic computing was really about, this is John von Neumann, if you can describe exactly what you do, computer can do it. Data-driven computing, what's underpinning this? This is Andrew Ng saying, one of the leaders in deep learning. If a typical person can do a mental task with less than 1 second of thought, we can probably automate it using AI, either now or in the future. So then an interesting question for us is, what is this learning that they are talking about? So if you put this into context of learning theories, what these systems do, they do this kind of behavioral associative learning, which is something that insects can do. So this is the behavioristic pigeons trained to do something. So I've been saying that if you would have 150 million pigeons, you could do this previous OpenAI application. You just have to wire them and give electric shock if they are right and another shock if they are wrong. And eventually they would collectively be producing the same stuff. But for human learning, this is interesting because, I mean, this is really behavioristic, really reflex type of learning. So I've been also saying that we should be talking about artificial instincts, not artificial intelligence. Because the levels of human intelligence are on different level here. So basically we talk about cognitive and cultural things. So I'll be kind of just putting quickly some of the known guys there. So Skinner is talking about behaviorism, Piaget is talking about conceptual development and construction there. Vygotsky is talking about how culture makes us, and Freire is talking about how we make the culture. If you map AI on this picture, you can see that deep learning is really on this behavioral level. So when they talk about learning, they talk about association and associative learning. On the cognitive side, simple processing AI is on that level, and we don't have anything on the cultural level. And if you go back to Vygotsky, for instance, he was saying that that makes us humans. I mean, this is the cultural level that separates us from apes, basically. That's what he's saying. So AI can make miracles, yes, but all its intelligence currently comes from humans. So these higher levels of thinking and intelligence, they come from humans. Or they come from independent, indirectly from humans. So like these examples of downloading 8 million web pages, humans wrote the text, and then you can diagnose the statistical characteristics of this human-generated product and copy it. Or you can do closed worlds where you have rule-based systems like chess, Go, and so forth, and computers can automatically generate the kind of possibilities. So it's all human intelligence still. And the interesting thing is that these systems only see what they have learned from the data that they have been given. So I run Vygotsky's image through Google's image recognition system, drilling to one layer, trying to see what actually the system sees in Vygotsky. So I don't know if you can see, but it happens that this system was trained using the ImageNet data, and it has a lot of animals in it. So it reconstructs Vygotsky by putting all different animal kind of shapes together. I don't know if you can see it. But so ethically, this is interesting from pedagogical point of view. If we go to the agency-based approach of learning, the idea is that humans become something that they did not be before. Learning is about becoming something new, something that did not exist. It's kind of it's becoming even something that no one else is. And these systems basically can only see repetition of the past. So obviously this is a challenge for applying these in educational settings as well. So there are many systems, and I don't go there. There are already publications. One that I like is Wayne Holmes' book on artificial intelligence in education that came out just a couple of months ago. But this is kind of modified. You have different kind of approaches. Student teaching, these are kind of instructivistic things where you pour the data to the student's mind. Then you have constructivistic approaches where you actually use technology to augment the kind of learning processes and human capabilities. Then you have teaching supporting systems that actually try to help teachers using AI technologies, and system based where you actually try to develop the system using these systems. I just mentioned these, but I'm just saying that the future is about change in the present, and we need to understand the present, and it is product of history. So we have to understand where we were, why we came, where we are now. So education is a solution always to existing societal economic problems. So education is not an abstract thing, it's a solution, it's a social institution that addresses problems of each era. So to understand how AI then will have an impact here, we have to understand why we have the systems as we have them today. That's what I was trying to kind of highlight also here. So what can I tell you that is new? I don't know if I can tell you anything that is new. I've been doing this for more than 3 decades at least already, talking about the same stuff. I don't think that I can say or tell you anything new, but it does not mean that we cannot do something new or something. We don't have to do, whenever we do something, it's always something new. So what we are doing now and what I'm doing now, I'm doing a project with the Joint Research Center, Commission Research Center, with teachers. So taking these technical possibilities to teachers and allowing and supporting them to invent these technologies. So this is a very kind of co-creative, co-creation type of approach where people design not only what this technology could mean for them in the classroom, this is K-12 kind of case, but also to think about the future of education, what they think the education should be in the future, and how these technologies could be used to move us from the present towards that future. So it's not about knowing the future, it's about doing it. It's making the future. So it is, that's the approach. So that's what I'm kind of saying, and that's where I'm finishing here. But I mean, as you saw, I ran out of time, or not, I did not run out of time, but I spent too much time. But these are big pictures, big questions, and I hope we have time to talk about those. Thank you.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. We do want to make sure everyone is able to leave on time today. So just 1 or 2 questions. Do we have anyone from the audience that would like to say something? Comment? A question?
So I just saw today that Oxford University was given a very large donation to create a ethics institute for AI. And so I was wondering about your thoughts about, given the points that you're making about, you know, we're evaluating AI in today's context and not the context in which, you know, AI could be used. What are your thoughts about the ethics question and how to make such an institute future-oriented in the same way that you're thinking about in terms of how we should be thinking about AI?
Yeah, the ethics question has been really interesting because there's a lot of talk. I mean, all international organizations are currently writing or have been writing guidelines for ethical use of AI, and it's I mean, in the EU policies, it's really very high and so forth. So people are talking about ethics, and at the beginning it was very much about questions like reliability and responsibility, in the sense that who is legally responsible if something happens and so forth. So it was kind of economic risk management approach. There has been more interesting work that looks really the kind of agency aspects of AI, for instance, from the ethical point of view. And I think it is important. I've been interested in dialogical ethics. I mean, really going back to the theory of ethics, I'm saying that these machines actually allow us to, in a way, reinvent ethical theories. So I go back to Bakhtin and others, not that well-known theorists of ethics that I think are very interesting in this context. But certainly, this one of the key topics for education is ethics of education. And that's, I mean, when I'm saying that we are moving towards the agency-based approaches, it immediately brings the question, why we do this, what is the kind of ethical kind of foundation for education in that kind of setting. So I think it's really very important topic.
And what you reported is a little bit scary. Insofar, if I look into the whole over world situation, is not the development and let's say the adoption of AI in the first world an even bigger threat to the third world? Is it not widening the gap between those who are disadvantaged against those who have all the power to use that technology?
Yeah, so there's a lot of echo here, so it's kind of difficult to hear. But if I heard right and understood right, yes, I think that's why, because even if my title is very much artificial intelligence, that's why I think that this is really the kind of core issue. That's why I try to say that the devil is in the big picture. So, I mean, just to give a very concrete example, if you look why many schools have difficulties today, what is the problem for a teacher today in Europe? I mean, it does not have that much to do with digital technologies. For instance, I did this with teachers around Europe just a couple of weeks ago. A very big problem is migration. So people come into Europe with very different kind of levels of knowledge and knowing and kind of cultural background, and the teacher has to get everyone to the level where you can teach them. And this takes a lot of effort. So, I mean, just as an example, maybe the problem is not there, maybe the problem is somewhere else. And I mean, in that case, that's why I'm kind of highlighting this question of global warming, which looks very weird from a point of view of artificial intelligence in education. I'm saying cement is a very important piece of understanding this systemic change. And global, I mean, this is I mean, I could go on the second round talking about that, but I think you are really hitting the right point. We have to look the global context where we see the societal, economic kind of transformation, and educational transformation becomes part of that process where we are now moving to a new system.
Our presentation today? Sharing your experience with us. I don't think I need this. In the final part of the session today, what we would like to do is to give you an update of what we've been doing with the Eden Council of Fellows. And my two colleagues, Wim and Antonio, are here to also provide you with some of their insights, some of their reflections, their thoughts of the last 3 days here at, at the conference. So I'm going to start with just a report, give you a little bit of background on what, whoops, okay, that's not working. Here we go. Eden Council of Fellows. The fellows have been around for a very, very long time. We have nearly 100 fellows within the Eden organization, and these are people that are recognized for their contributions to the further promotion of Eden, involved in a number of different activities that promotes the organization, both inside and outside of the organization, and people are recognized, members are recognized within Eden for their work, for their contributions. The Eden Council of Fellows, we kind of rebranded the Eden Community of Fellows to be a council because we started to recognize that over the years what was happening is once our fellows became fellows, or once our leadership moved into moved out of leadership positions within Eden, we were kind of losing that that synergy that would happen when we would all be together as a group, and we saw this we saw the fellows as a real a source of knowledge, a source of experience that was not being utilized to its greatest extent. So we've tried to rebrand the council, the fellows, as being a council of fellows, providing insights and guidance for the rest of the organization. That would be great. It's the, yeah, the next one. Yeah, thanks, Hunter. Nope, that one, thank you. So what is the role of the Eden Council? What do we see the fellows doing within the organization? Well, as I was mentioning, the fellows really have a wide range of experience, a wide range of knowledge that we can draw from in furthering a lot of the initiatives within Eden. And so we see the role of, we met last year, the fellows at the council meeting, and during that meeting, we tried to define what is the role of the Eden Fellows, what are their roles, what are their responsibilities, and what came out of that brainstorming session was really looking at, seeing the role of the fellow as having a role within the organization, where they have an inward focus, supporting the executive committee, advising them, providing them with insights and support. But we also saw the role of the fellows as being a think tank, a place of new ideas, people that have so much contact and networks within online and distance learning. We wanted to be able to utilize that as much as possible. So really positioning the fellows as being this think tank for new ideas. And finally, as being ambassadors for Eden, giving keynotes, being involved in policy. And so through this process last year in Genoa, we looked at what are the roles of the fellows, and that's what we came up with. Our next meeting was held this thing doesn't like me, so you want to go back? That would be. So our next meeting was held back at the research workshop in Barcelona. And what we did at that workshop is the fellows met and they started to brainstorm about what are the big issues? What are the things that we are being confronted with within open and distance learning? What are the things we want to concentrate as an organization? How can Eden play a role in really not just being part of those decisions and identifying where the trends are and what's happening within open and distance learning, but also to have an influential role. And so what came out of that meeting was 4 very long sheets of paper about all of the different things that were happening in the world. And we tried to group them within specific activities, within specific projects that we would then work on over the coming year. And at the fellows meeting on On Monday, we presented the results of those projects. There's 4 different projects. And the first project is looking at the strategic development of Eden, and there we have that inward focus. We're looking at working together with the EC to develop a SWOT analysis or to compare what we think from the fellows' perspective. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What kinds of threats are there? And so we're supporting them in terms of really where is Eden going to be in 2030. And so we've got Deborah Arnold is leading that project. Then we've got another project which is on open education trends. What's happening within open education? Where are all of the synergies? Where are all of the new things that are happening within ODL? And Antonio is leading that particular project. Then we've got the Eden community. What are our roles as Eden members? What are our values? What are our responsibilities? And that is a project that I've been leading. And then we've got the Erodo project, where we're looking at further positioning the journal as being as continuing to be as an open journal, a leader within the publishing area. So we've identified 4 different projects that we're currently working on within the Eden Fellows. If you see an opportunity for your involvement, if there's something that you would like to be personally involved in, then be sure to contact us and let us know. There is a board within the council. We have more kind of an organizing function. What we're trying to do here is really create, as I mentioned before, create synergies. Look at ways that we can bring the different parts of the organization together, not just within the organization, but outside of the organization, to really promote Eden. And so this is the board currently. I am the chair of the board. The vice chair is Don Olcott, Deborah Arnold, Albert Sanga, Christian Schumann, Torhild Slato, Antonio Texera, Wim van Petegem, and from the EC is Ulf Daniel Ellers. And so we've been working together to really promote Eden. We're still in the initial phases of moving this forward. So any feedback or ideas that you might have about the work that we've been doing are greatly appreciated. So what I'd like to do now is 2 of our senior fellows, Antonio and Wim, would like to share with you their reflections and insights on the conference thus far. Antonio?
Well, good morning. Well, first of all, I'm not Wim. I'm the second one, so but we change the order. Well, what I'm going to briefly share with you is a personal reflection on the conference in terms of the trends and the major trends, and also the content in that sense. Well, the first impression that I would like to share with you, well, this is of course a personal impression that you may agree or not with it. It's about the high quality of the keynotes, the papers that were presented, the posters, and the demonstrations. These were clearly a highlight of the conference, and I would like to congratulate you all for that. Regarding the main aspects of the conference from the content point of view, I would basically choose 3 words: consolidation, transition, and maturity, in the sense that there is a confirmation, in my view, of the diversity and consolidation of the trends that have been following in the last couple of years, with some new as well emerging. But basically, there was a consolidation of the already known trends, approaches, and solutions. And at the same time, this represents also a new maturity of the field and the community. In fact, if we look back to the past years, we can witness the mainstream of digital learning across all sectors of the education systems, from kindergarten to elementary education, from higher education to lifelong learning, and this has been reflected in the diversity and level of development of the experience that were shared here, and of course of the theoretical proposals that were also shared with us. As I pointed out previously, this consolidation represents, in my view, a stage of maturity of the field. Researchers and practitioners approach to the use of technology has evolved from seeing it as just a tool to facilitate the teaching and learning processes to a new dimension in which technology is understood as a means to enhance the human capability to learn. I believe that the keynote this morning perfectly exemplified this shift. This maturity is also demonstrated in the focus on digital literacies that we discussed yesterday. It is no longer mixed with the technological savviness or the simple ability to manipulate technological tools. There is a new, more holistic and complex awareness of the potential implications and limits of the use of technology in education and in society in general. In this case, we might say that digital literacy is now also a part of a broader concept of digital citizenship. It is also clear, in my view, we should not fear the future, neither proclaim it as a personal or collective phase. I think this realism has been came across all the presentations as well. We must embrace the future and innovation using a critical perspective. Educational innovation is more than ever grounded on a human and social perspective. It is no longer about assuring wide access to information, but to ensure the best interpretation and the proper use of data. The excellent presentations and discussions that were held at the Eden conference, the Eden 2019 conference, also demonstrate, in my view, this global shift in educational technology, in open distance and network learning, in technology-enhanced learning. Looking back more in detail to the presentations, we might identify a number of major trends, which probably could be more recognizable in the different contributions. I would just suggest a number of them. First of all, there is the emergence of new innovative approaches to blended learning design. This has been linked also with increased flexibility and flexibilization in the sense of the study programs. There's also a clear expansion of digital learning, as I already referred to, and that has generated also the need for the development of specific criteria for quality assurance of e-learning and also specific regulation to e-learning and distance education. This has also been addressed. But apart from it, the digital transformation of educational institutions has also played a major role in the presentations. But apart from it, also the impact digital transformation has on the change of the learning cultures. Many of the discussions were related in this sense also to the advancing, what we could call the advancing of the cultures of innovation. A new focus also was clear on measuring learning, and this has, of course, been seen either in the presentations on the assessment, also on innovative ways of certifying learning outcomes, in a sense that you also are increasingly blending formal and non-formal learning. The modularization and disaggregation of degrees has been linked with the micro-credentialing and other forms of digital certification, which have also been presented in detail. There's also a trend that has already been spotted in previous years regarding personalization, increased personalization, and the recentering in the human condition, in the human learning condition. A focus on the social emotional skills has also been clear across the presentations. Finally, of course, this new emerging trend on the use of artificial intelligence in the learning in the educational processes. Finally, in my view, this conference has once again shown and probably proven to any kind of doubt that we might have that the hidden community and the field in general is clearly matured, and the hidden community in that sense has shown its quality, impact, and vitality. We should not fear the future, as I said before. We should embrace it, but with an informed and critical way. And I believe this was clearly one of the messages that we can, in a way, use as a conclusion to this conference. Well, thank you very much.
Now it's my turn. My name is Wim van Petegem, and I work at the University of Leuven. And when I was asked to reflect on this conference, I was thinking of what kind of golden thread can I find in these reflections. Well, as I said, I'm working at the University of Leuven, so I feel like playing a home match here at this institution. Vives is a member of our association with this university, but it's even a bit more than that. Maybe some of you know, but Bruges is my home city. I've been raised here. Actually, my parents lived here, well, and me too, in early 70s in one of these apartment blocks beside the campus. And I still know this place as football courts, long time ago. But okay, so Bruges, my home city. Do you know where the name Bruges come from? Anyone in the room? Harbor is one of the possibilities. It has to do with water, that's for sure. But historians are not completely sure if it was the river, if it was the harbor, or if it even was a bridge. And I would like to use the metaphor of bridges as the golden thread in my reflections. Bridges have two aspects. There is always two sides for a bridge. And there is a construction in between the two sides. That is the bridge itself. So I will reflect on what I've heard and seen in this conference by trying to find those places where there was two sides linked together through a bridge. Let me start with the PhD Symposium on Sunday. The two sides were there. At the one hand, the PhD researchers. At the other hand, the supervisors, the critical friends. And we linked them together through intervision, through talking, discussing about their research, through helping them for their future steps in their research. You see the bridge? The second bridge that I saw in this conference was in Steve's presentation, his keynote presentation, where he was trying to link, at the one hand, pedagogy, and at the other hand, the technology. There is much more than that when you talk about education. There is not only the pedagogy and the technology, there is also contents. There is many more things when you talk about education. But Steve finds an interesting link, well, at least one of the things that I remembered from his speech, and that was when you need to think about new future trends in education by using technology, there is a lot of things that we as teachers need to rethink in our way of teaching. And he gave us one example that I will remember from this, from his speech, and that is ungoogleable questions. I think that many of you, in the meantime, have tried to Google what does that mean, ungoogleable questions. Well, but that's at least something that I will remember from his speech. Thank you, Steve, for that. Another bridge I saw, that was actually with the first keynote speech, which was an invited keynote speech by the main sponsor of the conference, Televic. And in that speech, they were trying to bridge the academic world with the commercial world and trying to see how we can become better friends. And I remember from Bert's presentation that learning is fun, but also that being an entrepreneur can be fun, and especially an entrepreneur in educational technology. He was one of those examples, by the way. I think I'm running out of time, but okay. Another bridge that I saw was in one of the parallel sessions when someone was presenting a course they were giving with students in the US and students in Romania. I think that, again, there was two sides. At this, for this example, you had two continents actually, and you were bridging that with technology, and in that particular case, they were using video conferencing and virtual reality. The striking thing there from that presentation and was, for me, something that I'm still puzzled with, and that was one of the reactions of the students where they say, okay, it was nice, good experience, we learned a lot, but we didn't learn about the culture at the other side. And that's something that I'm very interested in myself, because I'm also teaching together with colleagues in the US, and we also use video conferencing for that, but the topic of our course is exactly about intercultural competences. Okay, another bridge, and that was yesterday in Jan Elin's, colleague of mine, in his keynote when he was talking about hybrid classrooms. And he was trying to bring together, at the one hand, research, fundamental research, scientific sound research, and the practical side. The practical side, in his case, was about a hybrid classroom. From what I remember, there is still a lot to do to make these two working together, to bridge practice with research and vice versa. One thing that he was mentioning and that I will remember is we probably need a bit of instructional disobedience, right? Okay, I will skip a few things here. Okay. Actually, I would like to refer to another keynote that was Delphine Wante's keynote, where she was trying to bridge, and it was a bit similar to what Ilkka did today, where we are trying to bridge, at the one hand, what machine intelligence means, what machine learning means, what machines, equipment, technology can do, but at the other hand, the human side. Us, learners. And I think that the message that I got from that is that we need to be careful. Even if we talk about machine learning, there is always human beings behind. There is always us that first of all developed this technology. There is the ethical aspects that we need to take into account. So if we bridge those two worlds, we need to keep that in our minds. And the last bridge I would like to make is one, me standing here in front and you there in the audience, two sides, but there is a bridge between us. And the bridge is called Eden. Eden, our community, our family. Thank you.
Thank you, Wim and Antonio, for your insights and for your reflections. I know how challenging this is to do so soon at the end of a conference, to bring together all of the threads, to bring together all of the ideas, and then try to present them in a comprehensive, succinct, and coherent form. And I think you've both done a very excellent job. So thank you very much. Wim talked about bridges, and so I'd like to mention something that we forgot, that I didn't mention earlier. There is a bridge. We talked about the bridge from Eden, the Eden conference that you're at today, and the Eden conference is happening next year at the OU. There's also another bridge that will be happening next year, and that is the bridge from today to the Eden Research Workshop, which will be in Lisbon in Portugal, which Antonio is going to be heading up and has made this happen, that this will happen in Lisbon. So please mark your calendars. It will be in October next year, so try to keep your calendars free to come to the research workshop. Our final speakers today is we will have Joris Hendricks, who is the president of the Vives University of Applied Sciences here. And Sandra Cucino will also be giving final comments about the conference. So.
Dear participants of the Eden Conference, I hope that the last few days you've enjoyed the educational conference, that you've picked up some new ideas, but also networked and made contacts for further cooperation. May it have been a fruitful and inspiring conference about topics, distance and e-learning, and educational technologies. It was a great pleasure to host you all during this conference. I really enjoyed that international cozy atmosphere. I also wrote down a lot of interesting insights. Bert Wellijn opened the conference with a remarkable call to each of us to sell exams as something positive and to include feedback immediately in the exam. Technology can make it possible. Steve Wheeler showed us that learning is in the struggle. We need to use questions who invite students for deeper learning, such as Google questions, as we heard already from Professor Wim. Neil Watson learned us that we don't have to create cooks, but to prepare our young people, we need to teach them how to become a chief, who can create, and who can deal with complex problem solving. Jan Ehlen acknowledged the fact that, unfortunately, education by distance goes often together with big dropout. He concluded with a paradox. Research in distance education calls for research on the need of opportunities for physical contact in education. We also learned that both digital skills and digital learning will keep on staying high on the European agenda. Speaking the closing words of this conference is not possible without also thanking some people who have given their utmost the last couple of days, weeks, and even months to make this conference a success. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for the people of Eden for the impeccable organization and rich content. And I, in turn, want to thank Irina as past Eden president and congratulate Sandra with the future presidency. It's surely worth mentioning that some people of Vives or University of Applied Sciences did a great job. Thank you to Leen Thijs and Silke van der Kruijsen, who were responsible for the organization, and I would like a warm applause for them. I would like to thank our sponsors who made this conference possible, and in particular our colleagues from Televic. And finally, I want to thank all of you to come to Bruges. To each of you, pleasure, please have a safe return and care. I thank you.
Well, I don't have a difficult role at the end because all my previous speakers have done really nice closing words. And if I start to say more about, I will just repeat myself in really good overview, which was done by Wim and Antonio and Lisa and Mr. Hendricks, who closed the part of from the Vives University. I think we had really 3 nice, intellectually stimulating days. And I hope that each of you have a thought to go on with and to think about, as we already start the bridges, about the bridges, how to enrich this bridge of Eden community, how to build new bridges, how to jointly pass the bridges or go under them, or find the other ways how to make the Eden community better for your own sake and for all our sake. At the end, please let me conclude this with thanking to conference sponsors, Televic, principal conference sponsor, Blackboard, 4 Sevens, Signpost, Simlize, Standard, Broken Handle Conference publication sponsor, City of Bruges Conference dinner sponsor. Also, I would like to thank the host, the Vives University of Applied Sciences, Mr. Joris Hendricks, Vives President, Patricia Belmans, Director of Education Policy Unit, Isabel Vanzerbroek, Director of Research and Innovation, and especially dear colleagues, Silke Vanderkuse and Lintes. Please give a warm welcome to the Vives. I would also like to thank the program committee. I would like to thank to the Eden Fellows gathering around important meeting in Bruges and Council of Eden Fellows led by my dear friend Lisa Mari. Thank to Eden Network of academics and professional members and Eden Fellows and Senior Fellows. Thank to all of you, and particularly those taking active roles. To all speakers, authors, chairs, moderators, and presenters in the workshop. And last but not least, I would like to thank Eden Secretariat with lovely ladies at the reception, registration who helped us and were at disposal all the time, and to Andras and Ferenc for organizing all this to work perfectly. Please give them warm applause. And at the end, Lisa already announced our future activities. So please go home with the idea, how can you contribute? How can you spread the word of mouth about Eden community? What can you learn there and what can you bring to the community? And please join us at our activities, follow our web pages, and we will already start in November with the Education Distance Learning Week and online activities, which we enhance how to much more collaborate and discuss the challenges we meet today regarding distance learning. Thank you very much. Enjoy the Bruges. Those who are staying here, thank you for the hospitality, and see you next year in the OU UK at Milton Keynes. Thank you. Oh, and I have to, sorry, to finish. Thank you.